I'm Seren, the Major Tim ambassador for 2021 to 2022. This is Jackie Bell. Can you tell us a bit about yourself first?
Yeah, sure. Lovely to meet you, Seren. So I'm Jackie. I'm a senior teaching fellow at Imperial College London, and I'm also training to hopefully become the next British astronaut.
So I was just wondering, when you were younger, were your favourite subjects all were they STEM related, or did that come like later on in life?
I think they always were. I loved kind of reading adventure stuff, and I love doing science experiments and maths and things like that. Um, I guess I didn't know much about STEM subjects, so I didn't know much about the engineering side of things, and medicine and things like that. I didn't know much about that, but I was always interested by it when I was probably about your age and a bit younger. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you how old were you when you realised that maybe you might want to be an astronaut?
I think I can't remember properly. I think it's just one of those things that everyone has this like pivotal moment when they go, that's what I want to become. And for me, I think I was about 8 years old, maybe 8 or 10. And I'd been learning about space in school, and I liked watching Red Dwarf on TV with my mum and dad. And so I was really inspired by like science fiction and all of the science and stuff that I was learning at school, which was planets at the time. And so I remember I would lie on the grass and look up at the clouds and sort of daydream off. And I remember saying to my mum, "Oh, I'd really love to go into space. How do you get to go into space?" And that's when she told me that you could become something called an astronaut.
Yeah, that's a pretty young age.
Yeah, it was actually. And I think it's important because I think most of your dreams and your ideas of what you can become happen at around that age of, 8 or 10 years old. And I think if you're not encouraged when you're that young, then you can kind of take on board lots of different stereotypes that can suppress your dreams, if you know what I mean. So, you might want to be something, but then you don't see many women in that job or many people like you in that job or in that role. And so you stop believing in yourself. So it's really good that we form these dreams and these aspirations and these ideas in children when they're around that age, I think.
Yeah. I was also wondering, is obviously because you're a female, did that mean that you had any like extra barriers? Like, were you ever told that you couldn't be like an astronaut or anything?
So actually, when I was at school, when I was about 11, I was told that I wasn't very well. I wouldn't be very good at maths, and so my teacher actually let the boys do the higher paper and said that I wasn't going to be doing the higher paper because I might be quite stressed, and I wouldn't be able to cope with the pressure. And I think that that was based on stereotypes, on gender stereotypes, really, because there was no reason why I wasn't as good as the boys. I was very good at maths, and I went on to do a maths degree and a doctorate in maths and theoretical physics. So I clearly had the ability, but I think little things like that, and the dream about becoming an astronaut was something where you go in and you tell your teacher, "Oh, I want to become this," or they ask you, what do you want to be when you're older? And they ask all of the class, and then you say astronaut, and the person next to you says, "I want to be a professional footballer," and they're taken more seriously than you with your astronaut dream because maybe you're not, from the right country. I think a lot of people, especially in the UK, thinking 10, 15, 20 years back, will have thought that you have to be American to become an astronaut, and they won't have seen how big the UK space industry is. And so, yeah, I had a lot of setbacks, some of them based on gender, some of them not. I think when I went to do my PhD and got higher up in academia, then I definitely noticed that there wasn't as many women in maths and physics at that level. And that's why in my job now, I work at Imperial College and we try to support more women in their careers and change the system so that it's more supportive and open to women progressing in these fields.
That teacher that said that, well, kind of held you back. I think that you proved them wrong. What would you say to them if you could meet them now?
Yeah, so actually, my mum did meet the person again a few years later after I'd finished my degree, and they were like, "Oh, you know what Jackie's doing now? She's just finished her maths degree, and she did this and she did that." So, she's not. So clearly she could do it. You had all these doubts in her when she was in year six, and she's actually gone on and become the first in her family to go to uni and get a degree in maths. And then actually a few years later again, she saw the same person again. And then I'd finished my PhD. So he was quite surprised. But he did claim a bit of credit, saying that it was, that sort of push that I needed to make me feel confident, which I don't agree with. I think it did kind of steer my, I'll show them type of attitude. But I think that, either way, I was always still passionate with maths, so it wouldn't have mattered most. But I haven't met with the person since then.
Was maths your favourite subject at school then? Like when you were around my age?
Yeah, I had lots of different subjects that I loved actually. So it was hard for me to pick a favorite, but I think maths was the one that came easiest to me. So I loved music, I loved all of the sciences, I loved reading a lot. So I did like English. I wasn't as good at English as maybe the STEM subjects. But yeah, maths was the one that came easiest to me, and I really liked solving problems as well. So not just doing written maths, but solving things. So like Rubik's cubes or puzzles or little things where you have to move the matchstick so many times to find the answers to different puzzles. So I knew that I would always be interested in maths. Yeah.
And also because because of being female, you had some extra barriers. But were there any because you were like the first person from your family to go to university? Like, did that ever make you feel as if maybe you couldn't make it?
That is a really good question, actually. Yes. So I went to the University of Liverpool, which is a great university, and it was close to home. And so I was able to stay living with my parents. So I didn't have much money to move away. And my parents didn't want me to get into any debt and things like that. So I made it work by living at home and traveling to university on the bus when I had my lectures. But I think I didn't feel as sort of prepared for the university experience as some families might be. So if you've got parents who've been to university, or brothers and sisters or cousins who've been, then perhaps you have these conversations and you have these expectations of, what is expected of you and what to expect when you get there. And so for someone who'd come from a school environment where I knew everyone's names and faces and they knew mine and I knew my teachers quite well, that was really difficult to then be in a huge group of hundreds of people in a lecture theatre. And, even today, throughout that 3 years of my undergraduate degree, I didn't say hello and get to meet everybody. So you don't get to know everyone on your course. And so I struggled with that to begin with. And I also struggled with the fact that I was a home student, probably more than being the first in my family. So there were students living in halls, and they all got to know each other about 2 weeks before we started lectures. But because I wasn't really involved in those welcome activities, I didn't get to know anyone. So those friendships were formed before I got there. So it was a bit difficult. It's kind of like starting a new school, midway through year 8 or year 9, where everybody already knows each other for a little while and you're sort of the new person. So I did have those sort of barriers. And then I guess just there's other barriers as well. So throughout my PhD, I would go to meetings with people from Oxford and Cambridge, and very traditional, educational backgrounds would be there. And so they would ask about your parents' backgrounds, and they'd ask about, things that your relatives did. And so for those conversations, obviously I'm very proud of my parents and my family, but it just didn't resonate well with what their parents did, as doctors and lawyers and academics and things like that. So there was those sort of barriers as well, but they came much later.
If you could, would you have gone to the university that you went to, or would you have gone to a different one if you had the opportunity?
That is a good question. I think now knowing, I think now know more about universities in general. I think it would have been useful for me to go to open days and things. So I didn't go to any open days before I made my choice. I just saw Liverpool and I was like, yeah, I want to go there. And my maths teacher had also studied at the University of Liverpool. So I was like, okay, it must be good, you know, and I love maths and I want to do maths, so I'll go to the University of Liverpool. But I think it would have still been a nice experience to go and visit lots of different types of university and see the campuses and just get a different feel for what the universities were about. So for anyone who's thinking about a university, you know, going to university after school, then I would highly recommend going to visit different campuses. But in hindsight, I think I still would have gone to the University of Liverpool because I think it was great. They supported me really well. And now as an alumni, as a graduate, you join like this alumni family, and you can, you know, I get invited back and they kind of continue to support me as well, which is great. And it's just like being part of a family. So I don't know if you would get that out of the universities. I'm sure you would. But I love that it's a university in my hometown. So I probably would still go to Liverpool again.
If you could like meet yourself just before you started university, like knowing now that it would be a bit harder that because other people have the opportunity to like meet beforehand, what advice would you give your like mini self?
I think I would give my advice. So I'd give myself this advice all the way through school, to be honest. And then, you know, as you say, at the start of university, but I would say just be more confident and go and introduce yourself to people. I was very shy, and still am a bit of an introvert. And so I'm not the first person to walk over to a group of people and introduce myself and start a conversation. I'm much better at it now, but when I was like, 17, 18, 19, I didn't want to. So I would just kind of stay away and keep my head down or keep my phone out or, you know, read a book and just look busy so that people wouldn't come over to me and I wouldn't have to go over to them. And so that's something I've learned. So I would say just be confident, go over, make friends, talk to as many people as you know, because, you know, don't forget, you go to university to become one thing, but actually all of those people are going to go into different careers and you don't know when you might work with those people again, or when you might need someone from that career for something or ask a favor, or, you know, you have, say you set up your own company, then you might need, you know, a lawyer or a solicitor or an accountant. And so if you know all of these people when you're younger, it's just much easier to make those connections as well. So I would just say network and be more confident.
Okay, pretty good advice. So you were on the TV series, was it Astronauts? Do you have what it takes?
Mm-hmm.
And I watched one or two of the episodes about a year ago now. It was very interesting, but the swimming challenge didn't go too well for you. How have you like recovered from that setback?
Yeah, so yeah, for anyone who saw it, they'll have seen me struggle with my swimming, and you know, this is something I blame myself for a lot because when I was younger, I didn't like it. I didn't want to learn to swim. I didn't think it would be useful. I just was a bit scared of the water. My mum sent me to swimming lessons when I was younger, and on the very first day, they made me jump into the pool. And I didn't want to do it. And I was saying, no, I'll just lower myself in. And they were like, no, jump in. And they shoved me into the pool. And I was so scared that I made the decision there and then, I'm not going to ever get in the pool again. I don't want to learn to swim. And so I didn't learn to swim. And every time we had swimming lessons through my secondary school, my primary school and secondary school, I'd always provide a note to say, you know, oh, I'm not well, or, you know, I can't swim today, you know, can I do extra maths instead? And so all the times that my classmates went swimming, I did extra maths, which is why I say I'm so good at maths, because I had all that extra time to do it. And why I also say I'm so bad at swimming. But since then, you know, I'm really quite serious and hopeful that I can become an astronaut. And so I knew that I had to learn to swim. I knew that it wasn't good to stay bad at swimming. And so I've learned to swim since. It's much harder as an adult, I think, to learn to swim because you don't quite know what to do with your nose or your mouth or how to breathe properly and how to switch the breathing from your nose to your mouth. But I've learned since then. and I actually quite enjoy swimming now. I'm not the fastest. I don't think I'll ever be entering the Olympics anytime soon, but I do enjoy it as a sport now.
What's your favourite swimming stroke?
Probably, I don't know. So probably front crawl. Probably just standard.
I like backstroke.
You like backstroke? Backstroke's quite nice, actually. I think backstroke you can relax a bit more. But I always have people swimming really close to me, and as I'm relaxing, someone will go past and just splash my face, and then I go into a panic. But yeah, I'm getting much better at backstroke.
That's good. I remember when I was little, my swimming teacher realised that when I was doing backstroke, you don't need to hold your breath because your mouth isn't in the water, but I was still doing it. So
oh, really?
Yeah. So have you applied for the European Space Agency because they're looking for new astronauts?
Yes, so I've been doing my research and I've been keeping up to date with what's happening at the European Space Agency, and I was really, really excited about their announcement back in February about them opening up this selection. So yeah, I've logged on, I've started my application. The deadline is the 28th of May. So I've got plenty of time to keep looking over the questions and double checking. And this is something that I always said as a school teacher and now at university, is make sure that you read those questions thoroughly and give yourself enough time to read the questions and answer exactly what it wants you to answer. And so I'm doing exactly that with this. I'm trying to make sure that I've got everything on my CV perfect. And, I'm trying to remember things as well from school that I did. So, lots of rock climbing, being on the school council, things like that. To put on. So I've been going through all of my files at home and stuff like that, trying to gather lots of evidence. But yeah, I will be applying and I'll be submitting the application before the 28th of May.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Are you excited, nervous, or anything else?
Yeah, a bit of everything, really. I think this is something that people dream of, but it comes up so rarely. So you never really know when they're going to send out applications again. So it could be, it's roughly been every 10 years. So if I'm not to get it this time, another 10 years later is a long time to wait and to practice and to hope that my body is still kind of medically able to become an astronaut and that I don't have any problems with my health in those next 10 years. So yeah, I'm kind of nervous that I'm getting this shot for real. But yeah, and excited as well. It's a very exciting time for people, like me, who've dreamed to become an astronaut since they've been a kid. It's a really exciting time. But yeah, it's I'm trying to do what Tim Peake advises and what the European Space Agency advises, and that's remain calm under pressure. But it's very difficult to remain calm when you're very excited and nervous at the same time.
What sort of questions are included in the application?
Oh, that's a good question. So there's some sort of general stuff. So you have to talk about your educational background, and you have to do like a medical exam. So I've got mine coming up. So you normally do that with the people who do the medical exams for pilots. So you go to a medical examiner and they test everything, your body, how you are kind of fit and healthy wise, your eyes, your blood, your urine, stuff like that. So that has to be submitted with your application. And then some of the other questions are about whether you've been involved in life science experiments, whether you'd be willing to be involved in life science experiments, because when you're on a space agency, you're going to be having to take your own blood and do tests on yourself. And maybe tests on other things, small animals, things like that. So you have to be able to do those. And then other questions, it asks you about your experience in international settings, because the space agency is international. So they want to know that you can get along with other cultures and if you have any experience of those settings. And there's a lot of other questions in there as well about how often you have been involved in certain mission operations or travel or scientific experiments, things like that. So basically the type of stuff that you do as an astronaut. So, engineering, fixing things on the space station, all of the physical challenges, the sort of experiments that you do as a scientist and that you're expected to learn very quickly. They want to see evidence that you can do those skills.
And apart from the like the swimming, learning to swim, have you done any other pretty big like preparations?
A few things, yeah. So after finishing my PhD and then I was on the show was really good practice actually to see what I was bad at. And I'm really glad that I had that experience, because I think that, you know, we're all bad at things, but you'll always be bad at things if you don't learn to be good at them. And so learning to swim was the first thing that, you know, I wanted to become better at. So I prioritized the swimming, and I've done a little bit of scuba diving since then as well. And then languages was something that I wasn't particularly good at. And I don't think anyone, you know, very few of us in our family can speak other languages. And so there's a whole side of my brain there that hasn't really been being used. It's kind of just sat there waiting. And so I started to learn Russian. So I've been practicing Russian for a couple of years now. And still my brain's a little bit slow on making those connections, but I'm getting there. What else have I been doing? I've been learning to fly. So again, 2018, I started learning to fly in small helicopters. So I haven't quite got my license yet because of the pandemic. I was hoping to finish it last year, but maybe next year instead. But yeah, I've been learning to fly, and that's been the most amazing thing. So yeah, anyone watching this, or yourself, Seren, if you wanted to learn to fly, like, you should definitely look into it, because it's a really, really exciting career. And it's actually, you know, it can be made really, really affordable as well. You don't have to be rich to learn to fly. There are programs out there, there's scholarships, there's ways around it. And again, it's another career that we need more diversity in.
And the process for applying, what was like the process for applying to be part of the astronaut show?
Yeah, so it was, I think they tried to base it on what would be like a realistic selection as well for, you know, an international space agency, any of the space agencies. So we firstly had to submit a paper application similar to this part of the process now. Then we got called to interview, and at that interview we had to do a medical examination. Again, this is something that you'll do later on in the process, a few months down the line with ESA. And so we had to, again, all the things that I mentioned before, have our eyesight checked. We had to do exercise and see how fast our heart rate was, how fast our heart rate was when we were resting, for example. You have to have a good resting heart rate, not too high. We also had to get our balance checked. So one of the tasks was to stand on one leg and throw a ball against the wall and catch it. Again, to check our balance and to check our hand-eye coordination. And then one of my favorite ones was that we got put in a group, and a group of people that we hadn't met before, who were all going through the same process as me. We had to assemble a piece of IKEA furniture. So we had to put together this piece of furniture with people that we'd never met before, with only one hammer. So whoever was going to get the hammer was basically in charge. There was no instructions whatsoever. So we had to sort of work together to try and figure this out. And that was really, really fun. And there was a few other sort of little tests like that to test your attention and your, you know, your cognitive abilities and things. And then we had an interview with the producers of the program, just to see that we could talk and that we were okay with cameras and that we were really keen about our motivation for being part of the show.
The IKEA box, did you manage to build it?
Yeah. So in my group, which was the same group that Tess was in, so you've seen the program, Tess, who's a commercial airline pilot, she was in my group. That's when we first met, but we weren't allowed to speak to each other. That was part of the process. And so we kind of made eye contact when we met there, and we were in the same group. And the furniture that we made, it was like a chest of drawers. And I remember we finished it. There were some people who really wanted to be in charge. They were fighting to be in charge. And I remember me and Tess sort of stood back and let people get on with it and pass them the equipment and, you know, set out everything in order where we needed it. And we built this chest of drawers, and it was stood there. And then one person on the team said, oh, I think we should turn it round to face the proper way, because it was facing the backwards way. And I was like, oh no, let's just leave it be, because you'll be in times on the thing. And it looked fine. And so they picked it up, they turned it round, and as they did, they let go, and the chest of drawers just went like this.
Oh.
And just collapsed, like completely collapsed. And I was like, oh no, we're never going to get through this round. Like, that's it, we failed. But I guess those people must have failed, who made that decision. But myself and Tess, whatever method we did was the method that they were looking for. So yeah, that was good.
And if you do get accepted to be an astronaut, pretty soon, I guess, what experiment in space would you most like to do?
Oh, what a great question. There's actually so many. I don't know. And you know what? It would change so much as well. So the process is going to take about 18 months. So it'll be next October before we find out who the astronauts are going to be. And if I was fortunate enough to be one of them, which the chances are incredibly slim, because you're going up against all of the ESA member states, you know, most of Europe, if not all of Europe. And there's some fantastic people that I know just in the UK who are training as well. But I guess in that next 18 months, most of the experiments will change, but some of the cool stuff that's happening. So ESA have secured a few seats on the Lunar Gateway missions. So this will be, instead of going to the International Space Station, you would go to this new space station that's going to technically orbit the moon. So, you know, you could go to the Lunar Gateway, then you could hop down to the moon, do some experiments, and then hop back up and come back to Earth, which is really, really exciting. And I know that that's going to be something that is going to really, you know, be massive and involve a lot of future missions from 2024, so just a few years from now. And I think actually a lot of the European Space Agency astronauts, the reserve astronauts and the career astronauts, because they've introduced this reserve corps now, which is really exciting as well. So you can technically keep your job the way it is, and then, you know, if you get called up to become an astronaut, you go, you do your astronaut duties, and then you come back to work and carry on with your main job, which is exciting as well. I don't think ESA's ever done anything like that. But these astronauts might be asked to go on, you know, commercial missions as well. So do stuff with SpaceX, Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, and things like that, which will be exciting. So there's going to be lots. So I'm told there's going to be lots of opportunity to get involved.
And going into space, it sounds very exciting, but I guess it's also quite nervous. Like, you can get quite nervous. What would you be most nervous about? Like, you know, the launch, or like, you know, looking out into space and seeing just nothing except from maybe a few stars in the distance?
I think so. Something that when learning to fly, the thing that was most nerve-wracking to me was the landing. I think the landing is where you can have, you know, the takeoff and the landing in any sort of aviation, whether you're flying a helicopter or a plane, you know, of any size. The crucial points where there can be a problem is at takeoff and landing. And so I think for me, sitting on that rocket on the launch pad, I don't think anyone can be completely cool and calm. I think you're still going to have your adrenaline. You're still going to have your nerves of, you know, I hope that this goes well. I really hope that nothing goes wrong and that we've done all the checks. But you do put your faith in the engineering teams and the teams that have supported you as well. So I think that bit would be quite nerve-wracking. And then once you're in space, I think you would relax. And then once you're docking the International Space Station, maybe you would tense up a little bit more, because if that was to go, you know, even a few centimeters wrong, a few inches wrong, it could be catastrophic, the damage that you cause to yourself and the space station. And, you know, you really don't want that to happen, you know, billions of pounds worth of equipment, and also your colleagues who are up there, who are relying on you to get there safely and not endanger them. So I'd be nervous at the takeoff. I'd be nervous at docking with the International Space Station, and then landing as well. So, you know, getting things right. So even the way that you pack the module before you come back down has to be very, very specific, because if your center of gravity is off slightly, then instead of kind of coming straight down and coming in to land on Earth, you can kind of spiral, and then this spiral can become bigger and bigger and bigger. And that would make you quite sick, but it could also make you pass out. It could also change the direction of the angle at which you come in to the atmosphere at. And don't forget, on the bottom of the re-entry capsule, you have this heat shield which protects you from that atmosphere. And so if you come in at the wrong angle and that heat shield isn't face down, it could burn up the capsule from another direction. So you have to make sure that that's packed perfectly. So I think that would be the most nerve-wracking part, is coming back, because there's just a bit more room for error. But yeah, they're the 3 points I think that I would be nervous at. But once in space, I think it would be great.
It seems like a lot of landing and launching is quite a lot about trust. Would you say that you're good at trusting people, or is it just when you're going in, like when you're flying?
I think trust is a hard one. I think a lot of people struggle with trust if they've been hurt in the past, or if they've, had friends or people in their life who've betrayed them. But generally, I'm quite a trustworthy person. I like to give people a benefit of the doubt as well. And I will trust someone and trust the team. And I think if, I was to become an astronaut, then yeah, definitely that trust is a big thing. And I basically would be putting my whole life in the hands of other people. And I think the only other things that I can compare that to in my life would be when I've been cheerleading. So throughout university, I joined the cheerleading team, and I still do cheerleading now. And so you have to trust your team. It's like a family. You have to be in the right place at the right time, because if someone is about to go up in the air and you're not there to catch them, then that could be really bad. You can break people's necks, you could leave people paralyzed, you could, even depending on the angle, it can lead to death. And so both being on the ground and up in the air in the past as a flyer, I've put a lot of trust in my teammates. So I think, yeah, I am good at trusting people. I'd still be nervous, don't get me wrong, I'm still nervous when I fly, but when I'm a flyer in cheerleading, and when I fly in the air with my captain next to me, but I do put a lot of trust in those people, and I think trust is important.
Could you tell me a bit about the program that the ESA has recently announced for people with physical disabilities?
Yes, so this is another really, really exciting thing. So I think it's for the first time in history. I think they're the first space agency to go in this direction. But essentially, they are allowing people with physical disabilities to apply to become an astronaut, which again is great. And hopefully this will open up even more doors for people with other disabilities to be able to apply in the future. And so I think ESA are planning to take this sort of step by step. And of course, they have to consider safety considerations first and all of those things. And so astronauts that will have been, for example, too tall or too short to apply, they'll be able to apply, or people with like missing limbs and things like that. So they've lost a limb for one reason or another, but they have the cognitive abilities, they have the mental capacity and the academic ability to be able to carry out these scientific experiments on board the ISS. All of these people should have the right to apply, and now will have the right to apply. I'm not entirely sure exactly what disabilities are exempt. So I don't know if if you have a certain disability, you can or can't apply. There's lots of guidance and legislation about that on the ESA website. But just from the bit of research I've done, I know that it's kind of any height restrictions don't matter now, and sort of physical abilities and limb-based physical abilities.
You mentioned the height restrictions. Are you the right height then for?
Yes, so I can't remember the exact cutoff for how tall you can be and how short you can be. I should have done my research before chatting with you, Seren. But yeah, I think I'm roughly in the middle. So I'm average height. I'm about 5'5". So I think I'm average height for a woman, or a man or a woman, to be honest. So yeah, I'm okay on that aspect. Hopefully, I don't grow too much more over the next few months.
And I've seen that on Twitter and on your website that you're going to be doing this thing for charity where you strap yourself to a plane, and then it's going to fly. Can you tell me why this charity is important to you?
Yeah, so I saw wing walkers when I went to the Farnborough Air Show a few years back. It was the first time I'd ever been. And as someone who was training to become a pilot, a helicopter pilot, I thought I better get a bit more of an idea of planes and meet more people doing the same thing. So I went to Farnborough Air Show, and then I went to Farnborough Air Show, and then I saw these wing walkers, and they were amazing. So they were strapped to the top of the plane, as you say, and they were kind of climbing in and out of the plane, getting on top, doing all these shapes, which are very similar to the shapes that flyers pull in cheerleading. And I was like, wow, I want to do that. That must be amazing. So I got this opportunity in July to do that. So I'm currently raising money for that wing walk. It's going to be quite nerve-wracking, but exciting. I hope we get the weather and it's not raining. Otherwise, that will be quite painful to be on the top of a plane and being, getting the rain constantly hitting you in the face. I'm sure that'll be a fun experience. But yeah, the charity is Fly to Help, and they essentially got me into flying. So when we did the Astronauts Do You Have What It Takes, we met some of the crew from Fly to Help, and I was talking to Kim, who works at Fly to Help and manages lots of the programs, and she was like, you should learn to fly. And I was like, no, I can't learn to fly. I don't have the money, I don't have the right background, I don't even know where to start. And so she encouraged me to learn to fly, and so they've been a big part of me and my journey into aviation. And so I want to give back to that charity so they can support more people, more young people, to learn about aviation careers, to learn about, becoming a pilot or becoming air traffic control, or becoming a cabin crew, and all these different careers that you have in aviation. And they do really great stuff as well. So people, as well as their education program where they go into schools, or they host week-long sort of careers development, sort of residentials, they also have another angle, which is to do their days for people who have either life-limiting illnesses, or problems within their family, or they're just going through a really hard time. And so they'll be invited down to the airport for a day and taken up into the air and given an amazing experience with their families and friends, and something that they'll never forget. And this means a lot to those families who are facing difficulty, or who know that they're going to lose that loved one, that member of their family soon. And so, yeah, I'm just hoping to raise a lot more money to be able to enable those things to continue, especially now since we've been through this pandemic. People have, lost loved ones. They've gone through a lot of suffering, and it'd be nice to be able to take these people on a sort of once in a lifetime inspirational moment where they go up in a helicopter or a plane and do something different. So yeah.
What's the amount that you're hoping to raise? Like sort of minimum amount, the target?
So my target is £500, but anything I get above that would be absolutely fantastic. So the days that I was talking about before, where they take someone up in a plane, they cost their Air Smiles days, and they cost about £500 for one person. So raising £500 will be able to treat one person and their family, or their partner, or whoever they're with, to an inspiring day, or it could fund part of the week-long educational program for young people from the ages of 13, 14 upwards. So obviously, if I got 1,000, it would provide that for 2 people or 2 families. If I got 1,500, it would be 3 people or 3 families. So if I can get more, that would be great. But my sort of target for now is £500.
That's good. I'll make sure to donate some money.
Thanks, Seren.
And just as a last question, do you think that social media plays an important role in promoting like careers in spaceflight, STEM, and like that sort of area?
Definitely. So, just things like this today, like an informal chat and find out more about people in the industry, people, scientists, engineers, pilots, whoever they may be, I think is really important. And I know that I would have really valued all of this social media and ways to engage with those people when I was younger. So I mean, growing up, I come from a working class background, and so I don't have the ability to, you know, knock 3 doors down at my neighbours and then they're a pilot, or, you know, there's a doctor there and we can talk about their careers. And so I think having social media, it gives you access to you finding these people and finding these role models and following them and learning more about their research. You know, even before, when I was saying about going to university open days, you might not even need to go to an open day now, because you can find out loads about universities through your phone, just looking through their Instagram, or, you know, even TikTok or Twitter, whatever it is that they're on. So I think it does plays a huge role in this inspiration. And I know that the stuff that Amelia does with MajorTim.space and that you'll all be doing as ambassadors will play a huge role in encouraging more people through social media, through things online that they can access. So yeah, it's very, very important.
And I know that quite a few people, they like to write. Well, they write books. Do you have any plans for like doing one? And if you could, like, what would it be about?
I'd love to write a book, actually. I think books inspired me a lot to get into science and engineering and adventure and flying and all of these different things. I think having that sense of adventure and that imagination is something that all kids and adults should have. I think it's really sad when, you know, you're a kid and you have this big imagination and you think anything is possible and, you know, anything can be designed and built and achieved. And then as you get older, the scope for those things gets smaller and smaller and smaller for some people, and you lose that ability to innovate and imagine things that are not possible. So books for me has helped me kind of keep that imagination and keep that ability to dream big. So I would love to write a book. I don't know what it will be about. I guess with my background in maths and particle physics, possibly I could write something about particle physics one day. But I think I'd love to write a storybook instead. That can appeal to people of all genders and get them to just dream a bit bigger, you know, maybe going into space, maybe going into flying, maybe going into physics. And yeah, so maybe a storybook. So if I ever have the time, yeah, and if I become an astronaut, maybe I could write that book while I'm in space, looking down at the
Have
planet.
you got any titles that like you would quite like to use if you would write one?
Oh, I don't at the minute. Have you got anything that you would suggest that you would like to read?
I mean, if you did get the opportunity to go into space and you wrote one about that, I mean, I'd have to give it some thought. And we're writing a book, the Major Tim, the Young Ambassadors. We're writing one, and the title is Keys to the Universe, Stellar Masked by the Sensational Fall.
Wow, that's a really great title. So yeah, I mean, wow, it's great that you're involved in writing that book. That's brilliant, and I definitely would love to get a copy once it's finished. And if there's any way I can contribute, then yeah, just let me know. But yeah, and if anyone has any good titles for a book, then let me know that as well. I think it is one of those things that you have to really consider for a long time. And I know that your publishers have a big say in what the title is. So I think these things can change over time.
Yeah. If you could go anywhere in the world, like where would you go?
Anywhere in the world. I mean, I'd like to go a lot more places. I've grown up in Liverpool. I know Liverpool. I love Liverpool. I moved to London. I've lived in Bristol for a little while, but I haven't really been many places outside the UK, other than holidays and stuff like that. So anywhere really, I'd love to just travel to the places that aren't touristy and just see how other cultures live. I think that's really cool. And I love watching like all of these David Attenborough programs and things like that and seeing all the wildlife. So I would love to go to a nature reserve and just do all of this. This is kind of what I'm planning actually after, you know, lockdown and after COVID has passed, is to potentially look into go and travel in and seeing all these cultures and visiting all of these places that I've always wanted to go. So probably, yeah, nowhere in specific, but yeah, probably somewhere that involved lots and lots of nature, away from people. Not that I don't like people, I do. I love people a lot, but I think it's good for us to look after our nature, and I would love to see all of these places and help with those causes.
Maybe if it was abroad, you could like borrow a plane and just fly yourself.
That would be brilliant. Yeah. So once I've got my license, I think you have to do some conversions and different courses to make sure that you can fly other places, not the UK. But yeah, that would be the perfect way to travel, wouldn't it? Taking the helicopter around all of the different places.
Yeah, maybe you could fly me somewhere.
Definitely, you're always welcome.
I want to go to somewhere hot out of Europe, probably.
We'll have a little think, and yeah, when I've got my license, I'll give you a shout.
Yeah. Thank you for coming today.
You're very welcome, Seren. It's been absolutely lovely to chat with you, and really nice to get to know you a little bit more as well from your application. And I know that you know you're going to go on to become a great ambassador with our other ambassadors and with Amelia. And yeah, I look forward to reading more about your book as well and seeing all of the other interviews that you carry out in the next year or so.
Good luck becoming an astronaut, hopefully.
Thank you. Hopefully I can do another one of these from space, but I'll let you know. Thank you for the wonderful interview.